It's Halloween, ghouls and boys, and I have a very special episode for you. This, a Halloween Tales of Fame and Fright. We bring to you our picks for the top 5 best horror actors of classic film for you to vote on. We'll tally up the votes after we receive 100 comments with a vote in the comment section of this video. Once we tally them up, we will announce who you picked as the best actor of all times of horror films, and we'll put all of your names into a hat and draw out one winner, which will receive their very own classic DVD horror movie set. Remember, you place your vote in the comments of this video, which everyone can see. So get your silver bullets loaded, grab that garlic and those wooden stakes, and start sprinkling some holy water. Because here we go, bringing you our top 5 classic horror film actors. Sir Christopher Lee, considered by most to have been the finest Count Dracula to have ever sunk his teeth into that role. Christopher Frank Carandini Lee was born on May 27, 1922 in Belgravia, London, England. His first job was not in acting, but rather as a simple office clerk in a shipping company in London. Christopher Lee enlisted in the Royal Air Force, where he served during World War II, obtaining the rank of flight lieutenant. When Christopher was released from active duty in 1946, Lee decided he'd try his hand at acting, but found that none of the casting directors would even give him a chance because his height was standing at 6'5", way too tall for the movies at that time. He persevered, however, and was finally given a chance with a very small bit as Charles in the 1948 movie Corridor of Mirrors, in which, unfortunately, the New York Times would destroy the film with its initial review, calling it an irritatingly dull romantic fantasy. He continued on, though, with a number of small supporting roles, but really wasn't noticed until he was cast in the 1957 Curse of Frankenstein as the creature himself brought to life by Dr. Frankenstein. The film was a smash hit, and it grossed more than 70 times its production cost in its initial run. That was the attention that Christopher Lee needed. Hammer Films gained a liking to both Christopher Lee and his co-star Peter Cushing, and with Hammer Films behind them, Cushing and Lee would be credited with revolutionizing the making of horror films. 1 year after The Curse of Frankenstein, Lee would star as Count Dracula in the movie The Horror of Dracula. The smash hit and the performance of Lee as the Count was both the making of Lee's career and his nemesis. After a while, Lee began to complain that sequel after sequel, the role was losing its meaning, and he wanted an end to it. Throughout his career, Lee would have a role in over 213 films, parts in 65 television shows, and even 17 video games. Some of Lee's most memorable roles were in the movies Dracula, 1958, The Curse of Frankenstein in 1957, The Wicker Man in 1973, The Hounds of Baskerville in 1959, The Devil Rides Out 1968, The Man with the Golden Gun in 1974, The Lord of the Rings, and Star Wars: The Revenge of the Sith. Lee died on June 7th, 2015, at the age of 93, and was cremated with his ashes being scattered at Surrey Hills in England. To this day, when the name Dracula is mentioned, the face of Christopher Lee is remembered more than any other actor that has played that role. Bela Lugosi, also considered one of the best to have ever played the role of Dracula. Bela Lugosi is our number 2 pick for that role. One of his best roles out of his movie career was considered by many to have been Igor, the crazed blacksmith suffering from a broken neck from a hanging gone wrong, in the 1939 movie The Son of Frankenstein. Bela Lugosi was born on October 22, 1882, in Austria-Hungary, which is now Lugosi, Romania. The youngest of 4 children, Bela Lugosi was originally named Bela Ferenc Dizu Balaschko. At age 12, it is said that he ran away from home so that he could work odd jobs, including finding his way into some stage acting jobs. He found his way into studying at the Budapest Academy of Theatrical Arts and actually had his first stage debut in 1901. Lugosi volunteered during World War I and gained the rank of infantry lieutenant and was actually wounded 3 times throughout the course of the war. In 1919, Lugosi traveled to Germany. He picked up acting and acted in several German films until he finally immigrated to the U.S. in 1921. He made his Hollywood debut in the 1923 film The Silent Command, but really didn't get much work over the next 10 years because he had a great deal of trouble speaking the English language. Finally, in 1927, Lugosi landed the role in the Broadway production of Bram Stoker's novel, Dracula. It was a hit, and Lugosi would continue playing in that Broadway play for over 3 years. In 1931, Lugosi would bring the role to film in the Universal Pictures adaptation of Dracula. And it was that film and his thick accent that would forever embed the line, "I never drink wine," into the memories of horror fans forever. Lugosi also established himself from there on as the blood-sucking Count Dracula. But he was great in all of his horror film roles and in movies such as Murders in the Rue Morgue, 1932, The Island of Lost Souls in 1932. He played White Zombie, 1932. Mock of the Vampire in 1935. The Raven, also 1935. The Invisible Ray in 36. Son of Frankenstein in 39. And credits a total of over 116 films. To summarize his career, Lugosi once said of acting, "Every actor is somewhat mad, otherwise he'd be a plumber, or a bookkeeper, or a salesman." He said, "I will not be tortured. I tear torture out of myself by torturing you." Bela Lugosi died on August 16, 1956 at the age of 73 in Los Angeles, California. He is buried in Holy Cross Cemetery in LA in the Grotto, L120, number 1. Boris Karloff, most famous for, and our pick, for the best portrayal of the monster himself, that sympathetic yet horrifying creature created by Dr. Frankenstein. Karloff was born in London, England on November 23, 1887 as William Henry Pratt, later to be changed to Boris Karloff. He was the youngest of 9 children of the Pratt family, and as a young man, Karloff deliberately would fail a consular service exam so that he could pursue a career in acting. He became an extra for silent films and stage, and would finally be noticed for his role as the convict-turned-killer in the film The Criminal Code in 1931. Interestingly, the role that Bela Lugosi would turn down, Karloff would be cast as the creature of the Universal adaptation of Frankenstein. Karloff received so much praise for this performance that he became an overnight sensation, with his roles in the following films such as The Old Dark House in 1932 and The Mummy in 1932. The name Boris Karloff became synonymous with horror and the macabre. In the 1940s, as horror films started to wane, Boris Karloff would change his ways and start to begin to work in television, with several shows of his own, and also appearing in many other shows. Boris Karloff may be most remembered, by me at least, as the voice of the Grinch in the 1966 animated Christmas special, How the Grinch Stole Christmas. A role that to this day, when you hear the name The Grinch, you can hear Boris Karloff in your memory. Boris Karloff would gain almost 200 credits in movies and television throughout his career, with some of his most famous roles being Frankenstein in 1931 and The Old Dark House in 1932. The Mummy was one of his best in 1932. The Ghoul, 1933. Bride of Frankenstein in 35. Son of Frankenstein in 39. The Body Snatcher, Black Sabbath, Targets in 1967, and my most beloved role, The Grinch That Stole Christmas. Boris Karloff died on February 2nd, 1969, at the age of 81. His ashes lie at the Guildford Crematorium in Surrey, England. You cannot think of either The Phantom of the Opera or The Hunchback of Notre Dame without picturing our next pick in the top 5 most famous classic horror actors, Mr. Lon Chaney. Alonzo Chaney was born in Colorado Springs, Colorado, on April Fool's Day, April 1st, 1883. One of 4 children, Lon Chaney's formal education would be cut short very young, when he would have to leave school at a young age to care for his siblings and his mother, who, after becoming seriously ill, would be bedridden for the remainder of her life. Chaney had said, though, that his childhood was a happy one. He would entertain his family with made-up stories and pantomime that he would act out for them. He said that they were very close, and they spent much of their time together in their home. As a young teenager, Lon Chaney would get a job at a theater that his older brother was a manager of. He would handle props and do whatever was needed, and would become an apprentice stagehand. But Chaney's father, however, had said that one member of the family in theater was more than enough, and demanded that Alonzo get a real job. Obeying his father's wishes, Chaney moved to Denver and would actually work for several years as a carpet layer, an interior decorator, even as a tour guide for rides to Pikes Peak. While still in his late teens, Chaney's brother would produce a comic opera, and Chaney was invited to join. He had no second thoughts about leaving his job as an interior decorator and immediately left to join with his brother. Actually becoming a hit, the production company would be bought out by Charles Holmes, and the act would last for over 3 years across the West. Oddly enough, Lon Chaney began to fancy a career as a comic actor. After a few years, Chaney joined a vaudeville team in San Francisco. It was then that he started to think about trying his hand at acting in films. So in 1913, Chaney got his first part. It was as an extra in the 1913 film Poor Jake's Demise. Over the next few years, he would have small parts in close to 70 films as extras for Universal Studios. He worked hard. He did whatever he could to further his career. Then, fighting for a small raise in his salary to make it to $100 per movie, he finally would leave the studio and got his breakthrough role in the 1919 film The Miracle Man. Chaney had said that although the director had wanted to hire a contortionist for the role, Chaney decided that he would audition by flopping down onto the ground, rolling his eyes up in his head like a blind man, and dragged his body along the ground. He got the part. After that role, Chaney was actually sought after for his ability to endure extreme pain and his ability to play the part of a deformed or maimed character. Chaney actually became one of Hollywood's most popular actors in silent films with over 150 appearances. The role that would make him most famous, though, which was also a silent film, was that of the Hunchback of Notre Dame. Chaney, in that movie, would endure actual horrible physical pain just to play the part. He could only work a few hours a day because of it. He was strapped into a harness that would deform his body. He wore false teeth that it made it near impossible for him to speak. One eye would be covered with a heavy lump of clay that actually affected the vision in that eye for the rest of his life. And the total costume would weigh in at over 75 pounds. Then, in 1925, he would also star in a silent film version of Phantom of the Opera, again appearing as a grotesque, deformed character in which he actually inserted wires into his nostrils to make them point upward. Although he successfully, with great acclaim, played the part of deformed creatures, Chaney had said that he never thought of the roles as being monsters. Instead, he wanted to create sympathy with the roles that would lead to redemption. He said there was no point in playing such a hideous character if in the end the audience could not feel that the man had a soul and could be saved from utter degradation. Chaney decided he would take the chance and switch to talking films over silent films, where many stars of the silent film era couldn't make it, either because their voice wasn't correct or just didn't have the right style for the new type of film. He took on his first talking film and played the role of Professor Echo, a criminal ventriloquist in the movie The Unholy Three. His ability to use several different voices, including that of an old woman, and his acting abilities made him perfect for the new talking movies. But unfortunately, at the age of only 47, on August 26, 1930, while in negotiation for the role of none other than Dracula, Lon Chaney would die of a throat hemorrhage due to bronchial cancer. Lon Chaney is entombed in Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California. He is at rest in the great mausoleum sanctuary of meditation in tomb C6407. When it comes to horror movies, we all have that one movie or that one actor that just haunts our minds, forever hiding in the dark places of our minds. For me, that actor is our next pick in the top 5 classic horror actors of all time. Mr. Vincent Leonard Price, commonly referred to as the Master of Horror, was born in St. Louis, Missouri on May 27, 1911. Upon his birth, the National Candy Makers Association actually named him the Candy Kid. Why? Because Vincent Price's father owned the National Candy Company, which became one of the largest candy companies in the country. Price became one of the lucky few when the stock market crashed and the Depression set in. He didn't have to leave school at Yale because his father had specialized in penny candy, which even during the Depression anyone could afford, which kept the company going and the family well off. After he graduated Yale in 1933, Price spent the next year of his life as a school teacher. He finally admitted, as he once put it, to finding out that he actually knew nothing. So, in 1934, he decided that he would pursue a career in fine arts and enrolled at the University of London. As Price went on to try his hand at acting, he too found out that he was looked at as not being the type of actor that could be in a character role, solely because of his height. Price stood 6 foot 4 inches tall and found it difficult to win roles until he set his mind to try going in the direction of being a villain. He could definitely pull off being a suave, gothic-like bad guy, and he found success doing it. With his cultured, debonair poise and an almost enchanting musical voice, Price began his road to fame in movies such as Laura, The Long Night, and The Bride, and finally landing his first lead role in The Baron of Arizona in 1950. Price was doing well. He was on his way to stardom when he got the role as the revenge-driven sculptor in the 1953 movie The House of Wax. Even though he continued to get supporting roles in major productions, he was beginning to like and lean towards the genre of horror films. He starred in a number of lower budget horror movies, such as The Mad Magician in 1954. One of my favorites that still haunts me to this day was The Fly in 1958. The House on Haunted Hill, The Raven, and many, many more. Vincent Price collected fine arts. He was an acclaimed chef, a successful lecturer, and went on to co-star with many notable actors. He would star in films with actors such as Sam Waterston, Tony Randall, Cloris Leachman, James Coco, and many more. For 8 years, he hosted the PBS miniseries Mystery with his sinister demeanor. Price went on to do television, voiceovers, narration, and went from horror to drama to comedy to mystery. Price was truly a man of many talents. His last film was actually cut short in length because of his worsening voice due to emphysema from a lifetime of smoking cigarettes. His last film, he played the inventor of Edward Scissorhands. On October 25th, 6 days before Halloween, which, in my opinion, would have been a more fitting day for his legend, Price died of lung cancer at age 82. Vincent Price once said that what's important about an actor is his acting, not his life. Well, Vincent, I disagree. It truly was your life and everything that happened in it that made you into the actor that you were, and you, sir, will forever be in our hearts and never forgotten. Vincent Price was cremated and his ashes scattered at sea. So there you have it, folks. That's our top 5 picks for the best classic horror actors. Now it's your turn to vote. Vote for who you think in this list should be number 1. Put it in the comments of this video, and you may be the grand prize winner of your very own classic horror 6-movie DVD set to watch on your own.